I'm Jim Golden, Director of Finance. Tonight, we're doing a priority-based budgeting update. And as you know, we first started utilizing priority-based budgeting in 2010. We did it on a limited basis. And last year in 2014, when you were all involved, we did a comprehensive effort to fully implement priority-based budgeting concepts. And we also secured we used the consultants for priority-based budgeting and secured their tools that they produced, in particular their resource alignment diagnostic tool. So you yourselves had an opportunity to see those results and that tool at your council retreat last June. During 2014, all of the city's programs were identified and costed, and they were scored in the priority-based budgeting process. And then we did enter those programs and scores into the RAD tool last summer. During August, we shared some information with the City Council related to summary data on on those results, but we really did not utilize that too much in the 2014 budget process. And what we did discuss in September during the budget process is that we wanted to try to bring that back to you in more detail so that we could analyze program information. And what we want to do now is begin to look at them against each of the individual attributes and results that they are measured against. So now beginning tonight, this is our attempt to try to begin to bring that to you periodically. So we would want to try to do this leading up to the 2016 budget process. You're on the last slide there. Oh. So anyway, I'm going to begin with a quick overview of the priority-based budgeting concepts. First, we evaluate all the city programs against the desired results of the council and the city's and the key program attributes. Next slide. Okay. So. Sorry, what?
Our TV's out.
Oh.
Here. You turn on our TV?
I can't help you with that.
Yeah.
Hopefully we'll get that back in a minute. In the meantime, we do have the slides up here on the sides. So the desired results for community programs, those were as identified by the City Council towards the end of 2013 and early 2014. There were 4 desired results identified. They're shown here on this slide and in the order of priority as the community did weight them in a process that we did last spring. Vibrant amenities and opportunities for all was 28.7% weighting. Safe community is 26.4%. Reliable, innovative, and resilient infrastructure at 25%, and a thriving economic climate at just short of 20%. So in addition, we also had 5 desired results that were identified for governance programs. So the 4 that I just referred to were for community-oriented programs, and we do split the programs into both areas. Governance programs are those that are internal services supporting the rest of the organization. The desired results there were to ensure timely, responsive, and efficient operations, supporting city operations to be their best, provide clear, inclusive, transparent leadership and collaboration, and develop and maintain strong partnerships. Follow local, state, and federal rules, regulations, and mandates. Protect, invest in, and value the city's human and physical capital. Prudently manage and responsibly leverage public funds. So the governance programs are measured against those 5 desired results, and in the community-oriented programs are measured against the original 4 results, desired results that I went over. Now, all of them are measured against these 4 attributes. And the attributes are part of, these are identified by the priority-based budgeting consultants. It's part of the whole concept and approach. So these are not these are not attributes that we've identified, but the ones that we utilize. The first is the mandate to provide the program. Second is reliance on the city to provide the program. Third is cost recovery of the program. And then finally, the portion of the community that is served by the program. We have 1,244 city programs, 527 in the general fund. The reason why we have so many individual programs is that we do have a number of them that are identified in more than one division and department. They could have differing funding sources. So we have a lot of programs in public safety that are repeated in both the general fund and the public safety fund. Or they could also represent the efforts of an individual division and on a common program. And some of those examples would be like on community events. A number of divisions and departments are involved in the provision of community events and also on our public information efforts. So those are just some of the examples. But as a result, what is identified by our consultants in going through our data, they actually identified 737 distinct programs. So you can get the idea that there's over 500 or so programs that may appear in more than one division or department or with more than one funding source. So then also, what happens is after these programs are all scored, they are then placed in different quartiles based on their respective scores. Quartiles 1 through 4, quartile 1 being the highest scores, down to 4 being the lowest scores. So our updates that we will be bringing you now. Understand we have 4 attributes. We have 4 desired results in community-oriented and 5 more in governance. So that adds up to 13 different attributes of results. We are going to try to do our updates individually to focus on each one of those 13 attributes or results and how each program, or I'm going to give you data at least, on how each program influences that attribute or result. So I'll just preface it and warn you that it's probably important not to jump to any immediate conclusions based on any one report. I think it's a good idea to begin to see the data, let it kind of continue to be collected. That'll give you or reported, and that'll give you a complete picture of the impacts of any one program on any of those. All the 4 attributes and the 4 or 5 results that are attributed to those programs. So we're starting tonight with the mandates attribute. We're going to probably go through the 4 attributes, are the first 4 that we'll be presenting to you. So tonight's mandates, the different levels of mandates that are used, these are as defined by the Center for Priority-Based Budgeting Consultants. The scoring is from a high of 4 to a low of 0. A 4 is a program that's required in writing by federal, state, or county legislation. A score of 3 is a program required by city charter or other incorporation documents or to comply with regulatory agency standards. A 2 is a program required by a code, ordinance, resolution, or policy or to fulfill an executed franchise or contractual agreement. A 1 is a program recommended by a national professional organization to meet published standards or a best practice. And then finally, a 0 is a program where no requirement or mandate exists. So now, don't look at that. But I'm putting that up there as a reference. But if you look at the update that you got in your packet tonight on page 4, you will see this same graph or table. It's a chart that is identifying by department how we summarize each of these programs within each department as it relates to these 5 levels of the mandates. I'm just putting this up here so you know which ones what I'm referring to in this discussion. We broke down the departments based on our organization structure, so we have some smaller areas in there that are not part of established departments, and so you'll see city attorney, city manager, HR, city clerk, I'm sorry, not city clerk, but city council, and non-departmental. So
Councilmember Moore, would you like to ask a question?
Just a quick one, Jim, what do the yellow and green denote?
I'll be getting there in just a second, but those are the high numbers, so I will identify that here for you. So going from left to right, after the summary analysis, we begin to show the mandate level 4, which is, again, the federal, state, or county legislation. And so you can see in there that, like, if you pick any of those departments, you'll see where there are programs identified. So starting, let's say, down in finance, there are 9 programs that are mandated, and it's for a total of $929,000. So as you go across, what we've highlighted in yellow are under each column, which of those departments has the highest number of programs underneath that mandate level. And then in green is the highest budget amount in each mandate level. Now, of course, we've got large departments, and so we have some a lot larger than others, and so they are certainly popping up with more programs and more dollars in places like public safety and public works and natural resources. We do spend an awful lot of money on our purchase power, and so in the second column, the amount that's required by city charter, you'll see power and communications has the most dollars, under over $57 million there. So, thought there was a question, sorry. So I'll highlight some of those numbers. Public safety has the most programs required by federal, state, or county legislation. They have 20. Public Works Natural Resources has the most programs required by city charter or other incorporation documents. That's 78 programs. PWNR has the most required by code or ordinance, 167 programs. They also have the most programs recommended by a best practice or published standards with 255 programs. And then Community Services has the most programs with no requirement or mandate with 46 programs. And then from the cost of programs perspective, Public Safety has the highest cost of programs required by federal, state, or county legislation at $3.1 million. And I mentioned Power and Communications for the city charter requirements at $57 million. Public Safety has the highest cost of programs required by code, ordinance, or resolution at $18 million. And Public Works Natural Resources has the highest cost of programs recommended by best practices and standards at $18.3 million. And then finally, the highest cost of programs with no requirement or mandate is in Public Safety at $3.7 million. So the general fund, we indicated earlier the general fund has 527 programs on itself. That has make up a budget of $65.4 million. The highlights of the general fund, they're on page 5 of the update, and I'm going to take you through those, each one of those, but we're going to do that through looking at the RAD tool. So I'm going to ask Teresa to pull up the RAD tool here. And I included in your packet some dashboard views from the RAD tool. We began first with looking at all 1,244 programs on the citywide level of mandate, and those are on pages 6 through 10 of your communication, but I'm not going to focus on those. We're going to instead look at the general fund programs, and those dashboard views are on pages 11 through 15. So I don't expect you to be able to see these numbers very well on this screen. So you might want to refer to those pages in your packet. But, so what Teresa's done is begun by putting in the highest level of mandate. So what the RAD tool does here, make sure I got the right page myself. Yep. So what the RAD tool's doing is representing those, a total number of programs that we have in that area that are required by federal, state, or county legislation. 37 programs in the general fund at 4.85 million. So I'm going to try to use this pointer here. You'll see down here in the far right column here, it's totaling 37 programs. And then right next to it to the left is the, and I lost the pointer. Yeah, no, there you go. $4.85 million is the total of those programs. If you look at the graph, it's just showing those dollar amounts as they are applied across the different quartiles. And so this is based on how these programs score and the quartile they fall in. So what you can see then is that in quartile one, and the numbers are down on the bottom again still, and it breaks it out by quartile and budget amount. But for quartile one programs, we have 20 programs, and it's $3.3 million. And you see below that, we have in quartile two, there's 14 programs falling in quartile two at 1.18 million. And then 3 programs in quartile three at $333,000. So the next, go ahead to the next, well, I'm sorry. I want to also point out that down at the bottom of this screen, you can see besides the fact that, are we looking at the right one? It's got 1,200, you got the general fund in there? I think we didn't change, all right, the RAD tool's not been adjusted for those, the budget amount at the bottom. So within what you're looking at in the council packet, you'll see at the bottom that the total general fund budget is shown at 65.4 million. So this is 7.4% of the total general fund budget, and 7% of the total programs, with the 527 programs, are for the highest level mandate, by federal, state, or county legislation. So we'll now going to change it to the next level mandate, which is required by city charter or regulatory agency standards. And in that area, then that's on page 12, it's 57 programs. They're budgeted at $7.1 million total. That's 10.8% of the general fund budget. And then again, you can see now on this graph that they're spread out. Most of the dollars are in quartile 1 or 2. It's 4.3 million in quartile 1 and 2.2 million in quartile 2. We have 500,000 in quartile 3 and $21,000 for 2 programs in quartile 4. You know, these are the type of displays that we can pull out of the RAD tool. And it just gives you the broad sense of where these dollars are allocated. But it's not going to get into any individual program detail itself, which we will talk about here in a few more minutes. So it'll give you the general overall impression, but if you have an individual question about a certain program, you're never going to get it off the RAD tool. It's going to be in all the data that's hidden underneath it.
Councilmember Bagley?
Thank you, Mayor Coombs. I don't have any, just so I can follow. So what's the difference between 11 and 12? What accounts,
So-
for example, the quartile 1 going from 3.3 up to 4.3?
So those are the general fund programs on page 11. They're the general fund programs that have a level 4 mandate. So
Right.
they're mandated by federal, state, or county. On page 12, we're now showing you the general fund programs that are required by city charter or regulatory agency standards. But the 1, 2, 3, 4 on this screen is telling you what quartile they fall in for their overall program score. So looking at them as a total against all 8 or 9 attributes and desired results, where did this program fall?
Got
So
it.
it gives you an idea of when you're looking at it, obviously, if it shows you that having a high mandate score is going to mean more than likely you may also have a higher overall score.
I was just, so number 11 is federal and state, and then page 12 is city charter.
City charter, regulatory
Okay, I got
agency
it.
standards.
I got it, thank you.
Okay? So then taking you to the chart on page 13, those are the programs. Now, this is a level 2 mandate, which is programs required by a code, ordinance, resolution, a policy, or a franchise or contractual agreement. So we have 148 programs there. So you see we have a lot more programs as we move further down here. But they're budgeted at $24.9 million. That's 38% of the city's general fund budget. And then, again, this is now showing how they're broken out across the quartiles for their total overall program scores. And we have 50 of them that are in quartile 1 for $12.2 million, 45 in quartile 2 for $8.7 million, 42 in quartile 3 for $3 million, and 11 in quartile 4 for $814,000. I mean, you want to have more on top than below.
Councilmember Santos?
Thank you, Mayor Coombs. Jim, I get, and I'm following the RAD, but in here it also says that you're showing on your, in the council communication on page 5 of the overall reports and mandates, and I see where it says 38% of the general fund budget in that handout.
Right?
But is there a way to put that also in on the RAD?
Yeah, so,
Because I do see that on that one on page 8, it shows that one for,
and we look on page 13, because 8 would be the citywide numbers.
I'm looking at the citywide numbers now, so just look at the 13. So does it show?
It shows, so if you look on page 13, you'll see on the far right bottom, it says there's 148 programs.
No, I got that, but it also says that it's 13.58% of the total city budget. I guess my question is there a way to put on there that it's, unless I'm missing it somewhere,
Are you looking at the new one?
I guess I'm looking at the old one.
Yeah, you gotta look at the new one.
No, it's,
We got several of these, so
Yeah, I'm sorry, but.
things change, and I get it. So if I'm
and
looking at the wrong
that's
one,
the same problem we have up
that's
here.
fine.
So we didn't change it on here.
No, it's
but-
okay. I'm just making sure that we all got the same material. And I do see now that it's 38.04%.
Right.
So,
You just gotta put it in the budget.
my mistake looking at the wrong, look, I got the right page, but looking at the wrong handout.
Hey, I'm giving you so much data here. I certainly
and-
understand if it's hard to follow
But no,
this,
but
so-
the way that you're explaining it is perfect. That 1, 2, the 4 through 0, and then each quartile, it's understandable. It's just that I was on the wrong page.
Okay, great. So that was
get on the right page.
mandate level 2 on page 13. Then we got mandate level 1 on page 14. That's the program is recommended to meet published standards or a best practice. And we have 205 of those programs. It's budgeted at $21.5 million of the general fund budget. It's 32.9% of the general fund's budget. And again, if you go to that RAD tool presentation on page 14, you can see the number of programs broken down by the 4 quartiles. 33 programs in quartile 1 for $4.6 million, 69 in quartile 2 for $9.1 million, 85 in the third quartile for almost $7 million, and 18 in the fourth quartile for $783,000. And then the last snapshot is on page 15. These are the programs with no mandate or requirement. And we have 80 of those programs, and they are for a total budget of $7 million, which is 10.8% of the general fund's budget. And I'm not going to read those all to you, but you could follow that and you get the sense of where we're going on that. So, as I noted in the update, there's at 54% of the general fund's programs and 43.7% of the general fund budget are for programs that are either to meet standards or best practices or that have no mandate altogether versus so those are the ones and the zeros on the mandates. Questions before I move off of those RAD tool snapshots? So,
Councilmember Moore?
Yeah, and so Jim, how is this going to help us moving forward in developing next year's budget?
So, again, and maybe we could finish the information that I'm giving you tonight, and then we can talk about where we're going to go with that. How's that sound? Or what we're trying to do is to give you enough information on individual programs where if you are going to be asking the question of, is this a program that we want to continue to do or continue to put more resources into, you are going to have hopefully enough information on how each of these programs influence these important attributes and results so that you can be able to identify whether or not you think these are programs you need to put more resources into or not, or less resources. Now, it's too early for me to sit here and tell you what next year's budget's going to look like, and I don't know how much we would want to try to accomplish in reducing the budget reset. But if for some reason we couldn't do that through normal means, we would probably want to look at prioritizing programs and saying, are these programs we should still be in the business of doing? So can't answer that question whether it's really going to help us in the 16 budget process to actually make a program elimination, but if we have to make program eliminations or reductions, this would help us. Now, in reverse, when we add resources, we look at our request the same way. We are looking at the program, seeing where it scores, and identifying whether or not is it a high quartile program or not. Because we may not want to be putting more resources into a fourth quartile level program or even maybe possibly a third. We would like to steer more of our resources into the first and second level programs. Okay?
Yeah, I was going to ask you a question on page 4, the first graph with the yellow and green, and we talked about the power and communications, has a big budget of $57.16 million, and that's basically quite a bit of that is the cost of electricity. But doesn't the ratepayer pay the retail? I mean, isn't that embedded in the user's cost anyway? So why do we really care about that because it's the ratepayer that's paying that anyway? So.
Well, Mayor Coombs, members of council, we have not excluded any programs in this process.
Okay.
And so there are a number of programs that, like power and communications and electric fees, they do have a revenue in place that supports it and pays for itself. And so that is actually one of the attributes that we'll be visiting in the coming weeks is cost recovery. And so it gets a higher score as a result of that. So not only does it get a high score because it's got a high mandate, it also has a high portion of the community served. Right. So those type of programs, it reassures us that we're doing something that we should be in the business of doing.
Right.
But
Okay.
they also have programs that are also paid for entirely by rates,
Right.
but they fall in the fourth quartile.
Okay.
So that may put you in a position of asking, do we still need to do this? Because that would reduce the rates if you didn't do it.
Okay.
So,
And I think to answer both questions, one of the things when we go into the budget reviews, this is a tool that we used last year, but we're really going to engage in it this year. And so a lot of the new requests that come in, we're going to plug them into this system. But as an example, and I'm just using this because it was mentioned tonight, but in terms of the solar gardening and what that would cost, that actually would be something that if council wanted us to consider this, we would put it into this formula. And it would show up based on how we rank all of these pieces, based on all the criteria, and we would see it fall into one of these categories. And then that's actually where you take that raw data and then you make the value decision based on how it fits into the priorities of the organization and and really where it fits and do we want to fund it.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay, then, move on. So after those snapshots end on page 15, beginning on page 16 all the way through the end of this report, which is through page 57, what we've done is included the individual program level detail. So actually, we have a list, we actually have two lists in there, and they're all 1,244 programs and how they individually score against this mandate attribute. Now, lucky for us, there's nothing else on the agenda tonight. So I can take you through each and every one of these one by one. And then you will throw me out of here.
Line item by line item.
But, so I wanted to, but I think this is critical. This is where I want you to at least understand what we're giving you here, because when you are wanting to ask a question or find out about information about a program, this is the beginning of getting the data where you can find it. The detail that we've included on these lists includes the department and the division, the program cost, and the funding source. And then we also put the number of program FTE related to it. So on top of that, we also include the quartile group for the program that is based on the overall program score. So what you see then is where it scores on the mandate as well as where it scores on its overall score. So there's two lists in here. And the first list is of the general fund programs. That begins on page 16. The second list is all of the other fund programs. And, we do this because we have such a general fund focus with our budgets sometimes. We can sort this any way we want, but this is how we've chosen to present it. The second list begins on page 34. Now, the way the programs are sorted on these lists are first by the mandate level. So if you look on page 16, which is the first page, you'll see that on the far left column, the mandate to provide the program is the federal or state, which is the highest mandate. It's the 4 mandate. So we've got them sorted first by the highest mandate to the lowest mandate. And then within that, within mandate 4, we have them sorted by department and division. So you see, and that's done alphabetically. So what you see here is beginning with finance dash accounting. So it's department and division. And from there, we go to the quartile group, and we show the programs based on the highest quartile to the lowest quartile. So in finance and accounting, we have 3 programs shown there, one in quartile 3, one in quartile 2, one in quartile 1. We can sort this a lot of different ways. This is what Teresa and I decided might be the best way, but if you think there's a better way you'd like to see it, we can always rerun these things, and we can give you electronic versions of that type of detail. But thought this might be the best way to look at it.